It's always challenging to be introduced as a great guy. I'll try and be a great guy. I've had a very interesting, eclectic career, and what I hope to share with you today is the rest of the story behind that career. It's very exciting for me to be here with you today, to be looking at a group whose full experience, potential, expression of what you're capable of doing is still before you. Now, I know a lot of you are getting a head start on your business dreams because of the great programs here, but what you can really do, what you can give to the world, you haven't seen it yet. And it's exciting to think about what that might look like. So I think deeply about what do I have to say to a group like this that's worth your time and worth your thought. As I said, my career has been kind of unique. It's certainly not a blueprint. It's certainly not one that your career counselor would suggest that you follow. It wasn't linear. I very much followed opportunities as they arose, but I got thinking maybe that's what I can share. Maybe there's a lesson in that might be valuable to some of you. So I want to tell you a couple of quick stories about my career and some lessons that I've learned that I think are portable, that I think can be applied in any number of situations in life and in business. And I think that I can help you a little bit with your pursuit of success and the proper mindset. Before we get started, I just want to ask real quickly, it's always interesting to get inside of your heads. Does anybody want to offer me your current working definition of success? What is it? What does it look like?
Daily happiness.
Daily happiness is success. That's interesting. Anything else? Be careful, I will call on you if there's one more. Denver Broncos. What does success look like for the Denver Broncos?
Passing all my classes with enough time to watch my sports, of course. Getting to work on time.
That seems fair.
Bed every night, feeling good about myself.
So you have a very practical definition. What is your definition of fulfillment? Is there a difference between success and fulfillment? And based on your answer, this becomes a more interesting question. What is fulfillment? Has anyone experienced fulfillment in their life to this point? Is it an elusive concept? Do you feel it every day? Which is more important, success or fulfillment? Has everyone in this room been around, have you been at life long enough to realize that there's a connection between your decisions and the outcomes? Have you noticed that there are consequences to your decisions? Sometimes they're really good, sometimes they're not so good. So knowing that, what are you doing in your decision-making process and in building a mindset to plan your career, to plan your lifetime success and fulfillment? What mindset are you bringing to this process, not just for your own happiness, but for the eventual happiness of those around you and everybody you care about? And here's a really tough question. And if you think about this ever, nod your head. If it's never crossed your mind, I don't want to plant a negative seed. What happens if that career path that you're about to embark on, what if you get into it, everything you've got, you studied, you learned, you graduated, you started the business or you jump into the career, what if you find out it's not what you expected? What do? Do you quit? Do you resign yourself to a lifetime of feeling compromised? Do you start over? Might sound a little frightening. This is worth considering because the decisions you're making and the mindset that you're forming today is going to impact how you may respond to that eventuality. So I started my career, spent about 20 years in Hollywood, and I operated under a very specific definition of success in Hollywood. Success was easy. It was a bigger project next time. It was more exposure. It was a bigger budget. It was bigger. Success had to do with bigger projects. And there's an adrenaline rush, I'm not going to kid you, to finding a concept, turning it into a script, raising the money, seeing it on a screen or a stage. It was really quite a remarkable experience. And I loved the chess game of identifying what would work and what wouldn't. But there was that moment where I was asked to do a project that I wasn't necessarily passionate about, and I thought, I don't think I want to do that. because I realized early there were some projects I really cared about. I remember once getting the rights to develop a project on steroid use among professional athletes for a national television audience, and I loved that. I thought, this is important. This is a story that needs to be told. So I started running into the mundane and thinking, well, that's okay. But then one day I encountered the real problem. I was asked to produce a project I really did not want to produce. I was not comfortable with it. I wouldn't want my children to see it when it was finished. Now, it wasn't horrible, but it wasn't great. It was kind of a, well, I'll tell you, it was a slasher movie that I read the script and thought, wow. So now what do? I'm a producer, and here's a project I don't want to put my name on, and I have a family, and I have a career, and I have responsibilities. What do? I tried to talk to peers in the industry and say, what do you think? And they would look at me and say, are you crazy? Because again, remember, success in Hollywood is the next bigger project. This was a big project. So I was getting very little sympathy for the angst I was feeling over this project. Well, my response was I didn't quit, but I started thinking about what was missing in my life and why I wasn't as fulfilled as I thought I would be, because I seemed to be doing everything right. Things were progressing, and a lot of metrics you'd use to measure success were right on schedule, and I was trying to figure out why I didn't feel quite right about these things. So the first thing I did in response to this feeling is I thought, well, I can keep doing what I'm doing, but I can add more meaning to it. As mentioned in my bio, I was given this opportunity. I put together this reunion tour for the Doobie Brothers back in the 80s. And the way to add more meaning to it, I thought, well, this is easy. I'll just add a benefited charity. Now, that's commonplace now, but back in the 80s, that was kind of innovative thinking. So we attached a charity. It was the Vietnam Veterans Aid Foundation, great demographic fit. And suddenly, a concert tour that was fun, not necessarily important, unless you're a Doobie Brothers fan, it became important to me. And I thought, okay, this is going to work. I can add these layers of importance to what I'm doing, and that'll fill in the blanks. That'll get me where I need to be. Well, one thing led to another, and I became a bit of an activist in the entertainment industry. I turned into one of those guys that would sit down across the table with studio executives and pound the table about why is the rating system sliding, and why can't we produce more family entertainment, and wait, the box office G-rated films clean up compared to R-rated films. Why? It's not an economic argument. What's going on here? And I got in the middle of these huge debates, and that's a long story I do not have time to tell you about, because it was a very steep and frustrating climb. But it was important because something was happening to me that I didn't quite understand. I was starting to pursue fulfillment instead of success, and it changed my mindset. A couple of years after this all started, I moved back to Utah. I took a position with a company here, produced 4 or 5 family movies because that's what seemed important to me. And out of the clear blue, I get a call from a semi-retired guy, very wealthy, started a public company, was now finished with it. He sat me down and he said, I've been looking for someone like you. I have a new idea for a children's charity. I need someone with a media background. I have all these ideas for accountability and measuring the giving and documenting what's happening. And I was listening to this guy and I was thinking, oh my goodness, I'm home. This is what I dreamed of doing. This seems important to me. My purpose actually came and found me. But that wasn't the end of it there. The journey continued, because as I got into charity work, and I spent 10 years running the organization we co-founded called Operation Kids, we raised millions of dollars. We distributed them all over the world. As was mentioned, I found myself in post-tsunami Thailand rebuilding villages. We were in post-Katrina New Orleans rebuilding everything. I found myself, I was always going to exotic places, but the worst of those places. I'd say to a friend, I'm going to South Africa, and they'd say, oh, Johannesburg is great. And I would say, I'm not going to Johannesburg, I'm going to refugee camps. So I've been to all these wonderful places, and I've never seen the really beautiful parts that are on the postcards. But an amazing experience. And then I realized, well, if you're going to impact social change, you've got to impact public policy, which brought me to where I am today. I now have clients that include political campaigns, public policy initiatives, nonprofit organizations, and those innovators who are looking to fund nonprofits in a more interesting way. Now, in looking back at this, there's a moment where I can become a little frightened because it all seemed natural to me. It was just the way it was supposed to be. But had I not approached this from a mindset of fulfillment, I might have made some very serious mistakes in terms of decisions. So let's talk about all of you for a moment. Almost everyone in this room, with a couple of exceptions, me among them, are millennials. I don't know how you feel about being tagged, but I'm a boomer, you're millennials. You're a very studied group. And according to the Pew Research Center, there are three main characteristics about you as a group. You're confident, you're connected, and you're open to change. Now, what that might mean for you individually might be a little different. You might hear that and say, that's me. You might hear that and say, I don't know what that means. But consultants are literally paid to speak to you, to help companies sell you things, to help recruit you as an employee, to figure out how to talk to you in a way that is meaningful for you. I don't know if you can fully realize at this point in your life how different your mindset is from previous generations. It's a significant difference. And because you are categorically confident, connected, and open to change, I want to talk a little bit to that part of you that intends to change the world. Can I just see by a show of hands, you don't have to speak on this one, but I do want to see your hands. I want to ask you about two metrics of success. I'll give them to you in advance so you can know which one best suits you. Is it your intention to measure your success by financial metrics, or are you one of those people driven that there's something inside of you you're supposed to change the world and money's not going to be enough? How many, and there's no downside to this. This isn't an indictment on anybody, but how many of you have charted out a course and you'll know you've made it when you hit a certain financial metric? Okay. How many of you are not going to be satisfied until somehow you positively impacted the world? Okay. My remarks are the same either way. I just wondered if I was primarily talking the group into caring about mankind, or if you already do, and we're just validating each other. So if you're among those blessed few who live in perfect alignment between your passions and your duty, you are fortunate indeed. If you are in that larger group who have a sense there's something important you should be doing with your life and your career and your learning, but you're not sure what it is, I have a couple of things that might help you with the process. Because it's important to understand it doesn't have to be linear, and in fact, sometimes life has a way of handing you experiences along the way that make no sense in that moment, but are critical to what comes next in your life. So let's talk generally about what you choose to do. British journalist Catherine Whitehorn said, "Find out what you like doing best and get someone to pay you for it." There, I just saved you an entire MBA course. That's how you do it. Just find what you love, get paid. But I want to talk about the manner in which you choose to do things. And this is where it gets interesting when you think about fulfillment and passion. So social media posts are big at trying to encapsulate success in numerical lists. If you follow blogs or newsletters or posts of any kind, you're always seeing the 10 qualities of exceptional people, the 15 things never to say in a board meeting, the 8 things that will destroy your corporate culture. Everything's down to these lists. These lists scare me a little bit because I always get stuck. Is it worse if you do 2 of them but not the other 6? Does that help, or are you really out of sync because you haven't done the whole list? So it's a frightening thing to think of your success down to a numerical list. Despite that fear, I've created a list, but it's a short one, of 3 things that I think might be important and helpful to think about in building your career and your life. So the first thing I want to present as a concept, as a principle, is I want you to understand there is more than one way to change the world. So I spent 10 years as president and chief marketing officer for Operation Kids. We did some wonderful things. We raised from a standing start, we raised about $25 million, which we started in '99. That was a lot of money. And I got to produce galas, which scratched the production itch that's never gone away from me, and traveled all over the world. There were a lot of things we were very, very proud of as a group. One of the things I was most proud of is the day a gentleman named Robert C. Gay joined our governing board. Does anybody know Bob Gay? It's not uncommon for people to have heard of him. Bob Gay was CEO of Bain Capital. He took over when Mitt Romney left to come run the Olympics. He's an immensely successful individual. His father was the right-hand man to Howard Hughes, if you remember that name from business history. And his father said, Bob, you got to go to business school, you got to be a business success. And Bob will tell you, and I've heard him deliver this speech, I don't want to be a business success, I want to change the world. His father convinced him the way to change the world was through business. So after a Harvard degree and launching a number of successful companies, most recently, if you're familiar with Huntsman Gay Global Capital, Bob is the gay in Huntsman Gay. A tough name, by the way. He has trouble with his email address because if he uses his, for a while it was rgay at Huntsman Capital, and then it was bgay at Huntsman Capital. It was confusing no matter how he tried to do it. Point is, his success made him a very wealthy man, and because of that, he created Unitas, if you're familiar with that group. He's funded microcredit organizations all over the world. He has donated millions of dollars. He has changed the world through his wealth and through his generosity and through an amazingly humble spirit. This is a guy who, in a down economy, when HGGC went out, their first tranche was $1.3 billion. Do you know how few people can raise that much money? A remarkable man. But what he will tell you is important to him, what he did with all this success was change the world. Now let me tell you about another person I'm good friends with. She means the world to me. You guys familiar with McGruff the crime dog? Good friend of mine, Tibby Milne. Tibby created McGruff in her laundry room. One day she had a granddaughter over, and her granddaughter said something about, what if I don't feel safe? Tibby, being very creative, came up with McGruff. The concept got handed off to the National Council for the Prevention of Crime in Washington, D.C. A few years later, the Ad Council made the McGruff Take a Bite Out of Crime PSA their year-long campaign, and McGruff was famous. Now, Tibby never, to say the very least, never became wealthy from this. In fact, she struggled to keep the doors open on this organization almost every year because she's competing with so many crime prevention programs. But Tibby has literally saved thousands, tens of thousands of children from unsafe situations by creating safe houses and neighborhood watch programs all over the United States. A remarkable program, something to be very proud of. Which was the better path? The answer to that is, it's up to you. Whatever makes sense to you would be the better path for you. The point is, if you're open to change and opportunity, you can accomplish what is fulfilling to you in any number of ways. If you want to become a millionaire and become a major philanthropist, do that. But you don't have to do that to change the world. If you're open to the twists that life will throw at you, and an understanding that sometimes no matter how well planned your career path is, your course is going to change, these opportunities will not elude you. You do, however, need to be prepared. And you need to understand that change is a constant in your life. And in fact, there's a statistic I want to get to. As millennials, I don't know if you read Forbes magazine, but Forbes magazine said most of you in this room will change jobs an average of 16 times in your career. Now that's unheard of. For my generation, it's ridiculous to my father's generation. My father worked for 2 companies his entire life. Mine's slightly higher because I've started some, I've worked some, I've never been afraid to move around, and sometimes it's hard to tell if I'm working or not. But for you to change that many times, it's a good thing that you are generationally comfortable with change because you're going to see a lot of it. So point 1, make sure that you understand there's more than one way to change the world. Point 2, decide now to treat people with respect. Why in the world would I bring that up in this environment at this point in your career? I bring it up because it's been my experience that many people I know well and have worked with come to a realization, usually late in their life and career, that they did not treat people properly. And they regret it, and they come to realize it actually cost them money. Hopefully they regret it at a personal level as well, but they actually can monetize the way they treated people. There's a book I would highly recommend to you. You may be familiar with this because we're in Utah and it's not hard to run into these guys, but the Arbinger Institute published a book called Leadership and Self-Deception. I reread this book every year because it's too easy to slip out of the concepts, but I sit down with this once a year and reread it, and we teach these principles to nonprofit organizations. It's that good. I want to give you a small flavor of what this is about, because these concepts will change your business, they will change your family, they will change your life. So let's assume we all start a company. We all find out we have a common interest, common dream, compatible talents, and we start a company. Mark's CEO, and so now we're all answering to him. So this won't take much imagination to realize if Mark is focused on our results and our objectives, your objectives become his objectives as well. He's alive to the things that are important to you and what you contribute to the team. Your objectives matter to him. Does that sound like a place you'd like to work? Collaborative, respectful, open? If Mark is only focused on his results, and he's a guy who gets up every morning with a checklist, and you better not get in the way of that checklist. You know anybody like this? Well, now all of your hopes and dreams become kind of obstacles, irrelevancy. You become vehicles. I need you to make the company work, but stay out of my way. I have things to do. Be careful of these two mindsets. It is all too easy, especially when you start and build a company and it's your passion and you've seen it from the ground up and you've invested so much into it. Keep in mind, if the dream is that big, you need other people to accomplish it. You're not going to knock a dream that big out of the park by yourself. So how you treat people becomes a serious issue. The concepts in the book are called inward mindset and outward mindset. With an inward mindset, you measure your success by whether or not you've accomplished your objectives. How am I doing? It's all that matters. Wrong button. So the only metric that matters is how I'm doing on my checklist, how much money I'm making. Do I appear respectable? How am I doing? If you have an outward mindset, it changes dramatically, because with an outward mindset, we measure our success by what others are able to do as a result of our efforts. Let me repeat that, because in business and in the nonprofit world in particular, this is game-changing. With an outward mindset, we measure our success by what others are able to do as a result of our efforts. Do you look at your skills and talents as empowering somebody to go on and do something else, even bigger and better? Or is it all about you? Think about this, because it works its way into its metrics. And now when you measure the impact of what you do, it includes a measurement of what you're enabling other people to do. Here's why this matters to a company. For those who need a bottom line summary of this, if you need monetization to buy it, I'm good with that because it monetizes. In most companies, this triangle is inverted. Most managers spend most of their day correcting bad behavior and mistakes. That occupies the bottom of the pyramid. If the pyramid is properly placed, you spend most of your time building relationships with those you work with, those that matter to you, with stakeholders. That could be investors, that could be donors, that could be your employees, that could be your customers, hopefully. But you're building relationships. Your next allocation of time is you're listening and you're learning. You hear the story about the plant manager who goes out and walks the floor and learns all these amazing things about his company from the line level production staff that he'd never know if he didn't step down on the floor. Then you can teach and communicate. You can share your vision with people who understand you and you understand them. If you do this right, you spend that much time correcting bad behavior. If you invert it, well, you'll spend most of your time and effort at the lowest level of your pyramid, whether it's this way or upside down. You'll come to realize that the solution to a management, a business, a personal problem is always at the level below on the pyramid. What that means is, if you're constantly correcting your staff, your kids, your spouse, you better be careful on that one, you would do well to step down one level and spend a little time teaching and communicating. Maybe your staff doesn't understand exactly what you expected of them. Maybe that's why you're constantly correcting them. Maybe you didn't listen to a viable reason why your plan's not going to work, but you were so sure you were right you didn't listen, so there's no communication, and now all you're doing is correcting people. Do you see how this works? If your ability to teach your employees isn't working, maybe you need to listen to them and learn more about it. So the answer is always stepping one down, and of course the foundation of it all is building relationships with the people that matter in your life. I mentioned mindset. I've mentioned it several times a little bit. This mindset will serve you very well because no matter what happens to you in business, whether it's a linear path or if it changes constantly, 16 times, this mindset will help you respond properly. Now, you hear this philosophy. It's funny how authors capture principles that have been around forever, and they are principles. That's why they've been around forever. So whether a dated name like Marriott, if you take care of your employees, they'll take care of your customers and your business will take care of itself, or Richard Branson, there's no magic formula for great company culture. The key is treat your staff like you'd like to be treated. This is not complicated stuff, but you would be and will be surprised the more you get out into the business world how neglected these principles are. So the second thing is decide how you're going to treat people. The third thing is, on my short list, never stop learning. As much as you would like graduation to be the end of the process, it's not. Steve Jobs said the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle. Now, not settling may require adjustment, change, additional learning. As I mentioned, according to Forbes, you're going to change jobs. Actually, the 16 was the average. It's 15 to 20 times if you read their actual research. So if you spend an average of 3 years per job, think about that in context. And if you're comfortable with that generationally because you expect change, but you better be careful about your mindset or you're not going to see that as an opportunity, you're going to see it as an instability. If your mindset is solid, if you know you're going to make a difference, and there's several ways to do this, you know you respect people and you're building teams and relationships, then when this constant change is happening around you and you're always learning and you're always paying attention and you're always supplementing, hey, the company needs somebody who knows how to do this. I'm going to go figure out how to do that. It makes me more valuable. You take that mindset into this ever-changing environment, this is not instability. This is opportunity for you, and your career will actually progress faster because of the amount of change. So again, kind of getting to wrap all this up. So I found an ability and an aptitude in media early on, right out of college. But I didn't find my passion until I was 20 years into my career. Let me tell you what my passion looks like now as opposed to producing, commercials are funny. They're easy to make fun of. They're obviously important or there wouldn't be so many of them on TV, and that's how you find out about products. But when you're producing commercials, you can easily be struck with how mundane they are. So if you're looking for fulfillment, and your fulfillment is the creative process, you're home. But if you find yourself producing a lot of things that don't mean anything to you, you are not home. So I found my passion 20 years into my career, and this is what it looks like for me now. I'm passionate about cause-related marketing. I love aligning companies with authentic brands that speak to their customers, elevate their brand and sales, and everybody wins. The company's sales go up. The charity sees greater awareness and greater fundraising. They get more efficient because they're in the spotlight. Everything about cause marketing I like, except for misapplied cause marketing when companies do it as a repentance process for a problem they caused, and so they go try and find a charity that makes them look socially responsible. That's the downside. I also became passionate about the $300 billion a year that we donate in the United States to charity. What could you do with a startup with $300 billion? Let me ask you this question. Have you ever been watching a news feed, anything, and heard this announcement? X charity is announcing it will no longer be taking donations because they've solved the problem. You ever heard that? I fear you will not for a long time. But I'd like to think there will come a day when solutions will be found and not just sustained need and giving. So what gets me up in the morning is this realization that globally we can do better. This is why I've ended up working with Steve Young's Forever Young Foundation. We're holding these Forever Young Institutes where we take these Arbinger principles that are usually reserved for corporate executives. Corporations pay a lot of money for Arbinger to come in and teach these to C-level executives. We're teaching them to charities because we think it's that important. And I want you to know, partly because of my passion and partly because it's the right thing to do, there are some interesting changes that I want young business minds to know about. You can have it both ways. There are funding sources through L3Cs and B Corps where you can start for-profit companies and access money from investors and donors. If that intrigues you, if you are so wired and your company has a social aspect to it, you should look into those things because from the very beginning, it incorporates into the DNA of your brand and your company social responsibility. I've talked about change quite a bit. It speaks for itself. Stephen Covey said, "I'm not a product of my circumstances, I'm a product of my decisions." Decisions. We already decided we agree that there are consequences. Don't be afraid of the process. If you make a mistake, learn from it and move on. Keep in mind, this plan A, plan B stuff, there are a lot more plans than plan A and plan B. And if you're an entrepreneur, you'll hit every one of them figuring things out. So I have a personal commitment when I speak to students. There's a quote that is attributed to Nelson Mandela, but it was actually written by a spiritual activist. I'm not sure what that is, Marianne Williamson, but I love this quote. Just let me share this with you. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You're a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about you shrinking so that other people won't feel secure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in all of us. And as we let our light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. This matters in this journey you're embarking on. So just to wrap up, and I don't know if we'll have time for questions, but just to wrap up real quickly, realize there's more than one way to change the world, and be prepared for that intellectually, spiritually, and with a proper mindset. Resolve right now, not when you own the company, not when you have 20 employees. Treat people with respect and value their objectives. And with a sense of purpose and destiny, never stop learning and preparing for what may come next in your life. You have no idea how interesting. Life may have another plan for you. Make sure you're ready for it and open to it when it happens. Thank you. Do you want to leave time for? I'd be happy to answer questions if anyone has any. We've got a few minutes. Or if not, I'd also be happy to sit down. Anything? Yeah.
Over the years, what's been your favorite project and why?
Oh, that's a really good question.
For the camera, repeat the question.
Yeah, so the question is, over the years, what has been my favorite project and why? I'd have to categorize them. My favorite philanthropic project is, so we worked with foreign consulates. If you remember the tsunami in Thailand years ago, there was a massive outpouring of donations and all the money disappeared. The fraud was unbelievable. In fact, there was a marked uptick north into Bangkok. There was an increase in home sales and car purchases, and the money was disappearing up into the northern part of the country. So we went in with a corporate donor who said, we want to help, but we want the money here. We hired a group of villagers whose village was completely wiped out. We hired them to build their own home. Talk about efficient. Instead of sitting in despair on the grounds of a Buddhist monastery where the suicide rate and the alcoholism rate was going through the roof, we hired them to build their own homes on the land they were displaced from. And today there are 35 villages there. There's a boat building facility. All of the families are still there. They're all employed. They're fishing again. And I look at that and think, wow, you think of all the wasted money. Oh, and by the way, we did it for $1 million. Hundreds of millions of dollars disappeared. We did the whole thing for $1 million, including bribes. to the government. So I look at that and think that's kind of what gets to me, is that efficiency when you look and say, oh, it can be done. You can do this right and with very little. So I love that one. Creatively, I think I have to look at the galas we produced for Operation Kids. I produced 5 galas for Operation Kids, and we had great talent come in. We had Gladys Knight and Kenny Loggins and Leanne Rimes, and we hit an average. We raised $1 million a night. And the reason that became exciting to me is I got to do all the fun stuff of producing something, and then when I was finished, we gave the money away. It's a great feeling. And then I came to realize what you could do with $1 million if it was properly managed. So I have to go categorically, but those are a couple of things that just stand out that I absolutely love. Anything else? Please.
What are some things that you would say you do daily to keep your mindset where you'd like it to be?
That's a really good question. What do I do daily to keep my mindset where it needs to be? Part of what I consciously did is I decided I need to be in a different space. I'll be very honest with you. When I was working in the entertainment industry, and this is not a derogatory comment, and there are a lot of wonderful people in the entertainment industry, but something about that environment was not good for my soul. There was something about, it's like the better I did, the worse I felt. So I realized I needed to be in a different environment. So for me now, every day when I get up, the agenda that I have, my calendar is filled with meeting with impact investors, with nonprofits, with people trying to change the world in all kinds of ways. So I'm extremely fortunate in that I found a way to surround myself with people who are trying to make a difference. So that feeds it. But the other thing that I got involved with, because I think teaching a concept reinforces it to you, and that's why I'm so excited to be involved with Forever Young Foundation and their nonprofit institute. We present these core principles in 4-day seminars about every 2 months to a group of nonprofits. And I sit in on as many of those as I possibly can because I want to hear it over and over again. And I want to watch people light up to it when they become aware of the concepts. So somewhere between environment and teaching are what I use to stay on track. Please. It's Rick Larsen, Larsen. It's a good Norwegian name, I think. Anything else? It's great to talk with you guys. Thank you for being patient and listening. Thanks.